On March 31st, 2026, the President of the United States posted this on Truth Social. He said, and I am quoting directly, "All of those countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, I have a suggestion for you. Number 1, buy from the U.S. We have plenty. And number 2, build up some delayed courage. Go to the Strait and just take it." Let me say that again. The President of the United States told his own military allies to go to the most dangerous waterway on Earth, where Iran has been sinking ships and attacking oil tankers, and just take it, by themselves, without American help. And then he added, "You'll have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The U.S.A. won't be there to help you anymore." That is not a negotiating tactic. That is the sound of the most powerful military alliance in human history breaking apart. And what I am going to show you today is that this fracture is not temporary. It is structural, and it will reshape the global order for the next 50 years. Okay, so let me explain why this moment is so historically significant. Because alliances do not just crack. They crack along fault lines that have been building for decades. And the fault lines inside NATO have been building since the end of the Cold War. Let me walk you through the pattern. First, the Suez Crisis of 1956. Most people have forgotten this, but it is the most important precedent for what is happening right now. In 1956, Britain and France, together with Israel, invaded Egypt to seize the Suez Canal. The United States, under President Eisenhower, was furious. America threatened economic sanctions against its own allies. Britain and France were humiliated and forced to withdraw. The Suez Crisis did not destroy NATO, but it permanently changed the power dynamic inside the alliance. Britain and France learned that they could not act independently of American wishes, and America learned that it could use economic pressure to control its allies. That lesson held for 70 years, until now, because today the situation is reversed. America is the one waging war, and Europe is the one refusing to participate. Second, France under de Gaulle. In 1966, French President Charles de Gaulle withdrew France from NATO's integrated military command. He did not leave the alliance entirely, but he refused to allow French forces to be placed under American control. De Gaulle believed that NATO had become a vehicle for American dominance rather than a genuine mutual defense pact. He was right, and his decision to partially withdraw created a 30-year rift between France and America. France only fully returned to NATO's military command in 2009. Now consider what France did last weekend. France refused to allow Israeli planes carrying American weapons to fly over French territory on their way to bomb Iran. That is the first time France has blocked military overflights related to this conflict since it started on February 28th. De Gaulle would recognize this moment immediately. Third, Germany and Iraq. In 2003, Germany, under Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder, refused to join the American invasion of Iraq. The United States was livid. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld famously divided Europe into Old Europe and New Europe, dismissing Germany and France as irrelevant. But Germany's refusal did not break NATO. It weakened it. It created a precedent that major NATO allies could refuse American military requests without catastrophic consequences. And that precedent is now being invoked by Spain, France, and Italy simultaneously. Fourth, Turkey and the Incirlik question. Turkey is a NATO member that hosts American nuclear weapons at Incirlik Air Base. During the Syrian civil war, Turkey repeatedly clashed with American strategy, supporting different factions, attacking American-backed Kurdish forces, and purchasing Russian S-400 missile systems. The United States sanctioned a NATO ally for buying Russian weapons. Think about what that means. The alliance that was built to contain Russia was punishing one of its own members for doing business with Russia. Turkey proved that NATO members can pursue policies that directly contradict American strategic interests and survive. And now, today, March 31st, 2026, Spain has closed its airspace to American military aircraft. France has blocked Israeli planes carrying American weapons from crossing its territory. Italy denied American bombers landing rights at the Sigonella air base in Sicily. 3 NATO allies, simultaneously, blocking American military operations. This has never happened before, not during the Suez Crisis, not during Iraq, Not during any previous American military operation in NATO's 77-year history. Secretary of State Marco Rubio went on Al Jazeera and said that Spain, a NATO member America is pledged to defend, was bragging about denying American access. Trump called France very unfriendly. He told Britain to learn to fight for itself. And he warned that the U.S.A. won't be there to help you anymore. So this is the pattern. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every decade, the fractures inside NATO get deeper. And every American war that Europe does not support widens those fractures further. Suez, de Gaulle, Iraq, Turkey, and now Iran. Now I want to go deeper. I want to use structural analysis to explain why this fracture is different from all the previous ones. Because this is not just a disagreement over policy. There are specific structural reasons why NATO may not survive this crisis intact. Reason 1. The energy dependency trap. Europe gets approximately 15% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Before this war, that was manageable. Europe had diversified suppliers, strategic reserves, and stable prices. But this war has changed everything. Brent crude is up more than 60% since February 28th. The average gasoline price in the United States hit $4 a gallon nationally and $5.99 in Los Angeles. European natural gas prices are up 59%. And it is going to get worse. Here is why this creates a structural fracture in NATO. America is a net energy exporter. The United States produces more oil than it consumes. When oil prices rise, American energy companies make record profits. When oil prices rise, European economies suffer. Let me say that again. This war makes America richer and Europe poorer. Every day that the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, every day that oil prices stay above $100 a barrel, the economic interests of America and Europe diverge further. And Trump made this explicit. He told Europe to buy from the U.S. We have plenty. He is not trying to help Europe reopen the Strait. He is trying to sell Europe American oil at war prices. That is not an alliance. That is a business transaction. And Europe is starting to notice. Reason 2. The legal and moral divergence. Multiple European governments have publicly stated that they believe the American and Israeli strikes on Iran were illegal under international law. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez made it his central political platform. Germany has criticized the strikes. The United Nations Security Council condemned the strikes. Now, NATO is built on the principle that an attack on one member is an attack on all. Article 5. But Article 5 has never been tested in a situation where the attacking member is the one who started the war. Europe is being asked to support a war it did not start, does not approve of, and believes may be illegal. And Trump is threatening to abandon European defense if they refuse. This puts European leaders in an impossible position. Support the war and face domestic political catastrophe. Refuse the war and lose American military protection. That is not a dilemma that strengthens alliances. That is a dilemma that destroys them. Reason 3. The defense spending reality. Here is a number that tells you everything. 18 NATO members now spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. Poland is spending 4.48%. Sweden, neutral for 200 years, increased its defense spending by 34% in a single year. These numbers are presented as a success for NATO. But I want you to understand what they actually represent. They represent European countries preparing to defend themselves without the United States. When Poland spends 4.48% of GDP on its military, it is not doing so because it trusts American protection. It is doing so because it does not. When Sweden abandons 200 years of neutrality, it is because the European security architecture is collapsing and every country knows it. NATO is not strengthening. NATO is fracturing into a system where each country is preparing for a world where American guarantees mean nothing. And Trump's statement today, the U.S.A. won't be there to help you anymore, confirmed what European defense planners have feared for years. Reason 4. The China factor. And this is the part nobody in Washington is discussing, but it may be the most consequential development of all. While America fights Iran and alienates Europe, China is playing the diplomatic card. On March 31st, the same day Trump told Europe to go get your own oil, Pakistan's foreign minister was in Beijing meeting with China's foreign minister Wang Yi. They released a joint 5-point initiative calling for peace talks and an immediate ceasefire. China is positioning itself as the peacemaker. America is positioning itself as the war maker that abandons its allies. Now think about this from the perspective of a European leader. Your economy is being destroyed by oil prices caused by an American war you did not support. America is telling you to fight for yourself. And China is offering diplomatic solutions and stable energy supplies. China allows friendly ships through Hormuz. China buys Iranian oil at discounted prices. China is not sanctioning anyone. For 70 years, the strategic calculation for Europe was simple. America provides security. We provide loyalty. But what happens when America no longer provides security? What happens when the American president tells you to go to the Strait of Hormuz and just take it, knowing full well that Iran has been sinking ships and attacking tankers in that exact waterway? The strategic calculation changes, and it changes permanently. Now I want to pull back and explain what this all means. Not just for NATO, not just for Europe, but for every American watching this. Because the fracturing of NATO is not a European problem. It is an American problem, and it is going to hit your wallet in ways most people have not even begun to consider. Let me give you some numbers. Because the economic consequences of what happened today are not abstract. They are measurable, and they are accelerating. Australia, a country on the other side of the planet, just made public transport free in 2 states because its citizens cannot afford gasoline. Victoria and Tasmania are offering free trains, trams, and buses through April and into July because the war in Iran has made fuel unaffordable. That is how far the economic shockwave has already traveled. From the Strait of Hormuz to Melbourne, Australia. And it is just beginning. In the United States, gasoline hit $4 a gallon nationally as of today. In Los Angeles, it is 5.99. 1 month ago, it was 4.69. That is a 28% increase in 30 days. If this rate continues, and there is no structural reason it should not, Americans will be paying $7 to $8 per gallon by summer. Every dollar increase in gasoline costs the average American household approximately $1,400 per year. At $8 gasoline, that is an additional $5,600 per year per household that is not going into savings, not going into retirement, not going into the economy. It is going to oil companies and to the governments of oil-producing nations. NATO is not just a military alliance. It is the foundation of the global economic system that has sustained American prosperity for 70 years. The dollar is the world's reserve currency because America's alliance network makes it the most trusted economic power on Earth. American companies operate globally because American military alliances provide the security framework that makes global trade possible. American interest rates are low because foreign governments, including European governments, buy American treasury bonds as a safe investment. What happens when those allies stop trusting America? They diversify. They buy fewer treasury bonds. They develop alternative payment systems. They trade in euros or yuan instead of dollars. They build military capacity that does not depend on American weapons. They sign energy deals with countries America sanctions. None of this happens overnight, but all of it has already begun. And this war, and specifically Trump's treatment of European allies over the past month, has accelerated it dramatically. When the President of the United States tells the United Kingdom, America's closest ally for over a century, to learn to fight for yourself, he is not just insulting a friend. He is dismantling the architecture of American global power. And the cost of that dismantling will not be paid by Donald Trump. It will be paid by every American whose savings, whose retirement, whose cost of living depends on the stability of the dollar-based global economy. So let me bring this all together. There is a concept in game theory called a security dilemma. It describes a situation where one country's attempt to increase its own security makes every other country feel less secure, triggering an arms race that leaves everyone worse off. That is exactly what is happening inside NATO right now. America fights a war to increase its security. Europe feels less secure because of that war. Europe begins building independent military capacity. America sees European independence as disloyalty. America withdraws further. Europe trusts America less. The spiral continues. The last time this dynamic played out among Western powers was in the 1930s. The alliance system that was supposed to prevent war collapsed because the nations inside could not agree on who the enemy was, how to respond, or whether the cost of collective action was worth paying. I am not saying we are in the 1930s. I am saying the structural dynamics are the same. A world order built on American guarantees is cracking because America is no longer willing to provide those guarantees unconditionally. And the countries that depended on those guarantees are now scrambling to figure out what comes next. 3 NATO allies blocked American military operations today. France, Spain, Italy. The President of the United States told Europe to go fight for itself. Oil is at $115 a barrel. Gasoline is approaching $6 in American cities. And the alliance that won the Cold War, that maintained global stability for 3/4 of a century, is fracturing in real time over a war that most of its members did not want, do not support, and cannot afford. This is not fear. This is structural analysis. The evidence is in the airspace closures, in the diplomatic statements, in the defense spending numbers, in the energy markets, and in the words of the American president himself. NATO survived the Suez Crisis. It survived de Gaulle. It survived Iraq. But each time it survived, it came out weaker. Each crisis left deeper scars. Each recovery took longer. And this crisis is different in one fundamental way. In every previous NATO crisis, the United States wanted the alliance to hold. America pressured allies, threatened them, criticized them, but ultimately, America wanted NATO to survive because NATO served American interests. Today, for the first time in 77 years, the President of the United States is publicly telling allies they are on their own. He is not trying to hold the alliance together. He is daring it to fall apart. And 3 countries called his bluff today: France, Spain, Italy. 3 founding members of Western civilization telling America they will not follow it into this war. Whether NATO survives this is the question that will define the next 50 years of global order. And based on everything I have shown you today, every historical precedent, every structural analysis, every economic indicator, the answer is far from certain. The alliance that won the Cold War is fracturing in real time. And the consequences for European security, for the global economy, for the dollar, for your savings, for the world your children will inherit, are only beginning to be understood.